Because the big multinational hydrocarbon companies represented by mines and metals in this country won't train Australian ratings, as all the evidence indicated. So they come out here for short periods, short projects, won't train any Australians, won't put any money up, and then use that as an excuse to bring in foreign labour, to man the Australian vessels, taking Australian hydrocarbons out of Australian territory without paying tax, without paying any Australian labour rights. That's what this is about. The Abbott government and the Mines and Metals government to shut down Australians working in the hydrocarbon industry. All of the evidence, my witness statement went to that. It is a disgrace. This has nothing to do with the Royal Commission. There is no slush funds. Every dollar that was collected off employers was given willingly to train young Australians to work on those short-term contract jobs and other jobs in the industry. And for us to be dragged here because of a campaign by the Abbott government and by the Mines and Metals to shut down the rights of Australian workers to work in this country, they need to be held to account.
Well, we heard the suggestion in there today many times from Councillor Sissy that this was money that was paid under duress. It was a price paid for industrial peace. Now, just going on what you said at the start there, a multinational will come here, they're not really interested in Australia. They're not really interested in improving the value of Australia's workforce, perhaps, but they're also not really going to pay you money unless you're holding something over them. So are those monies paid under duress, and are they the price of industrial peace?
The evidence up there said they're not. And in fact, all of the only employers that were called up there today were the ones that willingly entered into a relationship to train Australians in the industry. The employers that don't want to pay that money, the employers that refuse to train Australians to work in their own country, are all there out on the Mines and Metals campaign. They dragged these employers in, and all of their evidence indicated there was no duress. All our evidence and my statement was there was no duress. There has been no duress. This has been a cooperative commitment by unions and constructive employers to ensure that young Australian men and women and Australian men and women of all ages have got an opportunity to work in an Australian industry. And there was no evidence to say there was coercion whatsoever.
So why do they pay?
They pay because they're committed to having a proper dialogue with an Australian workforce, because they are good employers, because they do what good employers do. They work in a cooperative fashion with trade unions to ensure that there are sufficient trained people to meet their needs on this project. You've got to remember, these projects run for 3 months. It takes 2 years, 3 years to train an integrated rating. It takes 10 years to train a captain of a vessel or an engineer. Someone has to pay, and they're willing to make a contribution. And there has been no coercion whatsoever. And there was nothing in any of the evidence, notwithstanding the questioning by the Royal Commission that indicated that there was any coercion. The only coercion here is for Mines and Metals that are seeking to use the Royal Commission to shut down an Australian industry employing Australians in it. And this is part of the Abbott government regime, a political attack on the rights of Australians to work in their own country, because it's cheaper to bring in foreign labour, because they pay no tax and they get paid foreign rates of pay far lower than Australians earn. That's all it's about.
I don't think there could be any argument that there's a benefit in providing Australian labour and supporting Australian training. It's a little hard to believe, though, isn't it, that there's not an element of industrial muscle here. If the company wants its project to proceed, it's going to have to keep it.
There's no industrial muscle. We sit down, we want to work in our own country. It's a robust debate. You want to work in this country? You want to work in this country? You're Australian journalists. I bet it's close to your heart. Of course it's robust. But we entered into legal processes of negotiation, EBAs. We have never taken any unprotected action. We've never broken the law. We have never had a slush fund. We have never collected a dollar that didn't go to training. All of that is transparent and acknowledged up there in the Royal Commission. We have done nothing but act legally and in the interests of our members and the interests of all Australians to work in their own country. It is Mines and Metals and the Abbott government that want to use whatever mechanism they can to stop that, to put in an alternate workforce that aren't Australian. That was the evidence. That is the outcome. This is an absolute waste of taxpayers' money, because all it is a vehicle for an Abbott agenda of industrial relations and a mines and metals agenda not to employ Australian workers. And that's it. And that's what was set up there.
So just back on that point of the money that was paid of the project on Darwin, what was the difference in cost between having the offshore parts of the crude money and Australian crude boats a daily rate, or what is the difference in cost?
Well, it's obviously substantial, because if you've got a Filipino seafarer living on poverty wages that doesn't pay any tax, that is a fair bit lower, just like a journalist's rate of pay, or a truck driver's rate of pay, or a miner's rate of pay, or a policeman's rate of pay. It is substantially less. It is a form of tax evasion. That's why it's cheaper. In the overall scope of things, you know, when you think of the massive capital productivity of these jobs, very little, very little. This is about an industrial relations agenda. That's why these employers up there are prepared to enter into bona fide agreements to employ Australians, because it doesn't impede the cost of the contract, because they can deliver a productive contract, because it is good and they want to employ Australians. It is Mines and Metals Association that want to replace an Australian workforce for a whole lot of political reasons. They don't like trade unions. This is a jihad against trade unions, nothing else. A political pogrom against trade unions, nothing else. It's got nothing to do with money. Australians have got a right to work in their own country, to pay tax, and to operate under legally binding enterprise agreements, and that's all maritime workers do. Nothing more and nothing less, and we should have never been called here. And it's a disgrace that Mines and Metals and the Abbott government have created the circumstances for a union like mine to be called here today. I sat there all day. I flew across from London, where I was dealing with a high-level superannuation on workers' capital infrastructure to convince international people to invest in our ports and our national interests. I flew all over the weekend to come along to say exactly what I'm saying now, and was not given the opportunity. Well, that says it all, doesn't it? Just more wastage without an outcome.
So far, what do you make of what's come up in the Commission so far?
Oh, well, it looks like a waste of time and money. The whole thing really seems to be about attacking the MUA because we want to train Australians to work in Australian industry, the hydrocarbon industry. And any employer that's cooperating with us to deliver that training is being called into the witness box. So it's obviously, you know, we're cooperating fully, we've got nothing to hide. The MUA's never operated a slush fund, now or previously. Every dollar that's ever been put into training has gone to train Australians, and that's palatably clear up there. So again, we're cooperating, but this is really part of Australian Mines and Metals and the Abbott government's desire and determination to remove Australians from an Australian industry and replace them with foreign workers. Nothing whatsoever, and they're using this Royal Commission as a vehicle to that political end.
Because there's been absolutely no suggestion at all of any financial impropriety here, hasn't it?
None whatsoever. This is purely, you know, and it's the Royal Commission. It's obviously been referred to them by Mines and Metals, who have had a jihad against Australians working in their own country, and that they've used the Royal Commission and taxpayers' money for no other reason to destroy Australian workers' rights to work in their own country. And it's a disgrace that Mines and Metals should be party to that, and it's a disgrace that the Abbott government is party to a process to allow that.
Because one way of looking at it, you could say the union did that was rather good negotiating if you got money for a professional training organisation, money that was going into training Australian workers.
Well, these projects are here for 6 months. It takes 2-3 years to train an Australian rating, 10 years to train an Australian officer. Who's going to train them? They're gonna come out of nowhere. They're gonna pull a rabbit out of a hat. every time an Australian construction starts to drill Australian oil in Australian territory. It's a nonsense, and Mines and Metals don't want to train Australians. And again, they're using, the Royal Commission to intimidate employers that do want to work with the union, are cooperating in the long-term delivery of training because they don't want Australians working in an Australian industry. It's that clear, and the Royal Commission is wasting its time, its money and its energy on the MUA on this one, or on anyone. Like I said, we have never operated a slush fund. All of our finances are transparent. It all goes to the interests of the membership, and every dollar that came out of the negotiations with these employers trained young Australian men and women to work in their own country.
Solidarity. Solidarity.